If you've been going around the good old internet looking for the right podcast to fulfill your New York Yankees needs, well, I'll be the first to deliver the good news to you. You have found it. Here on Yapping Yankees with me, your host, Mike Scudero, you and I will be discussing the latest news, takes, and talk throughout the entire Yankee universe. Oh, and there may be some ranting on my behalf. Yeah. Anyway, what do you say we get to it? Let's get to yapping! Well, hello there, my fellow Yankee fans, and welcome to episode 239 of the Yapping Yankees podcast. As always, I am your host, Mike Scudero, your friendly neighborhood Yankee yapper with the best yap in all the land. Here on October 13th, 2024, with yet another extra large order of the Yappuccino for ya. Thank you. Oh my goodness, guys. Last week I left you with a message, hoping and praying that despite my prediction of the Yankees beating the Royals ultimately, that this week's episode would be a celebratory one, where we are previewing and preparing for the American League Championship Series, rather than an episode consumed by the usual sadness, heartbreak, depression, and livid anger that has usually always ultimately resulted in every single Yankees playoff run throughout the Judge era. And today, here I am on October the 13th, proudly coming to you with the former, because unless your residence is located under a rock with no cell or internet service, completely cut off from the outside world, you know as well as I do that the Yankees are, in fact, in the American League Championship Series, preparing to face the Cleveland Guardians starting tomorrow night in Game 1. Hell yeah, another round of applause. Oh my gosh. What an intro that was, huh? It is deserved, though, let me tell you. What a week it was, guys. And I feel like I say that every single week, but as long as the Yankees continue making me say that, I'm going to continue to say it, because I'm just happy that the Yankees are where they are now. Again, I predicted that they would be here in the American League Championship Series, but there is something about this round that is somewhat of a dread to all of us, as we know, hence the episode title, because that's the question I'm asking myself right now. This is the first time in the Judge era, since the Yankees started to make the playoffs again in 2017, of course, after having missed in 16, that the Yankees are in an American League Championship Series in which they are not, as we know, facing the Houston Astros.
Give me a hell yeah!
That is, in fact, deserving of a huge hell yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin, because it's just relieving for once. That doesn't mean the World Series is guaranteed, but it does have me finally asking myself, maybe, just maybe, could the fourth time be the charm? So, obviously, you think back in 2017, the Yankees met the Astros in the CS and lost, with all that controversy surrounding that. We know, we don't have to go through that. We've been through it a million times. 2019, it happened again in the Championship Series, and the Yankees lost again. 2020, they lost to the Rays in the playoffs in the DS, and then, well, in that weird season. 2021 was that disgraceful one-game wildcard game at Fenway Park. The Yankees lost that. 2022, they found themselves back in the Championship Series after fighting their way there, got to the Astros, and lost in the most humiliating of fashions humanly possible. Last year, they did not even make the playoffs, as we know, and this year, they find themselves back in the Championship Series. But it is not the Astros this time, it is the Cleveland Guardians, which is very interesting, because the Guardians are usually, at least in recent history, in this Judge-era variety of playoff runs, I should say, usually the Guardians typically have been the Division Series matchup that would then lead to the Astros. If it wasn't the Twins, it was the Guardians, or / Indians, depending on when it was. So it's very interesting to now have them in the CS best of 7 as opposed to the first round, which is what has taken place for the vast majority of the prior playoff runs in the Judge era, heading into the fourth ALCS in that time, we have the Guardians instead of the Astros. When it comes to the rest of the series around Major League Baseball, aside from the Yankees and Royals, which we will definitely get to in just a minute, I got pretty close to getting absolutely everything right on the American League. I got both winning teams correct. I said Yankees and Guardians would move on to the CS. That was correct. Just the game count for both was wrong. Actually, completely reversed, because I had the Yankees and Royals going 5, with the Yankees coming out on top, and I had the Guardians and Tigers going 4, with the Guardians advancing. The game count was just split. It was reversed. So instead, the Yankees ended up finishing the Royals off in 4, and the Guardians ended up needing the 5 games to take down the Tigers. Impressively so, might I say, especially considering the Tigers had Skubal going in Game 5 in Cleveland. But the Guardians still managed to get it done, so despite getting the game count wrong, I did predict Yankees-Guardians ALCS, and that is where we are now, of course. On the National League side, I got just about everything wrong. For the Mets and Phillies, I definitely didn't discount the Mets completely at all, especially considering the magical run that they were on and still are on heading into the CS now. But I did still think that ultimately the Phillies would barely pull it out in the end, hence why I had them winning in 5 games, especially considering that that 5th game would have meant that Zach Wheeler, who pitched wonderfully in Game 1 against the Mets before his bullpen blew it for him, would be going again in Game 5, and that would obviously get a little bit hairy for the Mets. But of course, the fact that the Mets finished it off in Citi Field before they even had a chance to go back to Philly for Game 5 would greatly help the Mets and just eliminate that potential possibility happening at all. So the Mets ended up winning in 4, invalidating my prediction. And the Padres, well, to say the least, the Padres really disappointed me. They really, really did. I truly thought that they were the better team of the two between them and the Dodgers. The Dodgers' rotation obviously suffering from injury. The lineup, while it's definitely no pushover, don't get me wrong, but I do think between having an injured Freeman, who's probably not even going to be able to play every single game in the championship series realistically, especially when they go 3 in a row at Citi Field if necessary without any days off in between, and they're also just banged up in general, especially in their starting rotation, but they have an injured Freeman, and then it drops off a bit once you get past the 4 or 5 hitter, Teoscar Hernandez, and then so on and so forth. There is still talent after Teoscar, definitely, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, compared to the Padres lineup, it's just, I don't know, it falls off a bit more after Teoscar. A bit more so than it does at any point throughout the Padres lineup. And on that thought, I thought the Padres had a longer, more talented lineup. I'm not invalidating Shohei and Mookie Betts, don't get me wrong, but again, once you got past 4, I feel like the Padres lineup was longer. You had Arise, Tatis Jr., Profar, Machado, Jackson Merrill, Xander Bogaerts, and then you even had a couple of sneaky bats who were very good in this series, like Kyle Higashioka, former Yankee, of course. And you also had David Peralta, who didn't have himself a bad series at all. So I just thought the Padres lineup was longer, despite having lost Musgrove to Tommy John surgery until 2026, which is just tragic, honestly. I also thought the rotation was a bit better, and obviously both bullpens are fantastic, so I guess that's kind of a wash. Padres obviously bulked up with the back end of their bullpen at the deadline, as we recall. But nonetheless, the Dodgers just got the edge ultimately, mainly because the Padres, after their 6-5 victory against the Dodgers in Game 3 at Petco Park, after the second inning, when they scored 6 runs and just completely overwhelmed Walker Buehler and the Dodgers, after that, well, this would definitely hurt their chances. They thought it a good idea and an efficient strategy to not score a single freaking run for the rest of the damn series. And obviously, mathematically, that would include innings 3 through 9 of Game 3, even though they would end up going on to win the game. Still no more runs scored after that second inning, so that's 7 innings. They lost 8-0 in Game 4, so no runs throughout that entire game, and 2-0 in Game 5 back on Friday, so no runs in that entire game, amounting to 25 innings of not scoring a single run. And yeah, that'll hurt their chances just a little bit, especially in the playoffs in a best-of-5. So yeah, needless to say, they came up very short, despite looking very encouraging throughout the vast majority of the first 3 games, and that was that. So this was a rare instance in which I actually felt like the better team lost. I did not think the Dodgers were going to move on, but yet we have to deal with them in another championship series that they'll probably just lose again, especially considering they're facing the Mets, who have this dark magic run continuing on here. So, got both National League series wrong with the team and the game count. It happens. What are you going to do? So, got everything right except for game count in the American League, but basically got both teams right, so you got both teams wrong in the National League. So 50-50 on this one. I hit 75% correctly with the wild card series, so I did a little bit better with those. And right now, with the division series, got the teams right in the American League and wrong in the National League. It happens. With the championship series, I'll give my predictions in just a little bit. But right now, yeah, that's the big picture, guys. So we are headed into the championship series, and we are down to the Final Four. And I would say, as of right now, with the exception of the New York Mets being the lowest seed in the National League and still being amongst the Final Four here, everything else is, I mean, at least record-wise during the regular season, I guess you could say the way it's supposed to be. Because you do have the American League's two best teams record-wise facing off for the American League pennant. So in the American League, everything's going the way that I guess you would quote-unquote draw it up, if you could say that. And in the National League, you have the Dodgers there, the best team in not only the National League but also in Major League Baseball. So despite their choking ways, it's only right, I guess, that they go for the National League pennant at least. The only surprise really amongst the Final Four, of course, is the New York Mets. And their run continued against the Phillies, man. I was just at a loss for words, really. They just leave me speechless. So now, the likelihood of a potential Subway Series World Series, which I can't even believe I'm saying, it's very likely now because we are only a round away from that being a reality. And if the Mets continue this magical run when they're going to shellac the Dodgers, all they got to do mainly is keep Ohtani and Betts quiet primarily. Ohtani didn't do too much other than that 3-run homer at the start of the series against the Padres, but Betts is on a tear, so they're going to have to quiet him down a little bit. If they could do that, they're going to move right on with little to no difficulty, guys, because other than that, all they got to do is handle the Dodgers' bullpen. And if they slam them early and that bullpen doesn't even really have the opportunity to be able to hold the Mets down late, and they're already out of it, well, the Mets are going to take care of them real quick. So, it ought to be an interesting series, but depending on how you think about the Yankees and the Guardians, if you too, like me, think that the Mets' magical run could very well continue, well, then we're really looking at a potential Subway Series World Series. Last time that happened, obviously, was in 2000. I was only 3, about to turn 4 a couple of months from that, so I was far too young, nor was I even a baseball fan yet, to understand, comprehend, and even enjoy that Yankees World Series victory that they would end up closing out in Game 5 at Shea Stadium at the time. But I would be very much old enough for this one. That's for sure. So I don't want to look too far ahead because anything can happen in this championship series, whether it be the American League or the National League. Let's stay grounded here and speak about what's going to happen in the immediate future. The Mets and Dodgers game is actually going to start in just about an hour and a half from the time I'm recording now. So I'll probably be finishing up this recording right around the time that's starting. So I'll finish this up and watch the beginning at least of the game while I'm editing. And then just after I'm done editing and uploading and whatnot, I'll go watch the rest. You will probably hear this episode after that game has already concluded, so you'll probably know the results, whereas right now as I'm taping and talking to you in my real time, I do not know anything yet because the game isn't even starting for another hour and a half. But nonetheless, guys, around the league, that's what's going on. That's the overall playoff picture, including the Yankees' current state of affairs, and it is all good, guys. We can recap because there was certainly a lot to go through. We can recap the games and talk about some of the inner details. We can talk about the team's most impactful players in this series, maybe some things the team can improve on as they get ready to head into the American League Championship Series starting tomorrow night on Monday at Yankee Stadium. We can go through a variety of things. We can pick apart the games as well. But this series did end sooner than I was anticipating because, again, I did predict the Yankees to move on. But I had them winning in 5. I had them splitting on the road, just like they did at Yankee Stadium, and then coming home for a Game 5, which would have been nerve-wracking because I think it's safe to say in that game they would have had to rely on the very emotionally unstable, to say the least, Carlos Rodon in a Game 5, and that is kind of my worst nightmare, so I'm pretty glad it didn't turn out to be that way. And the Yankees did, in fact, just end up wrapping it up in 4 games behind the amazing work of their bouncing back ace, Garrett Cole. I did predict him to bounce back nicely in Game 4. And also with the help of a certain other giant in the lineup. And it may not be the captain you are thinking of. So let's just go through this series right now and just talk about some of the biggest things about it. We could start with Game 2 because obviously when we spoke last week, Game 1 had already happened on Saturday. So we spoke all about Game 1 already. We could just cover Games 2, 3, and 4. I guess that is this week's recap, if you will. Unfortunately, Game 2 would not bring even a fraction of the joy that Game 1 did. Now, Game 1, we were talking about the concerns of the starting rotation only because Garrett Cole had actually looked really bad in Game 1, and talking about the importance of Carlos Rodon taking the ball for Game 2 and him having to go out there and get the starting pitching at least back on track. Not so much the Yankees overall back on track because they had already won the first game. They didn't lose. So just get the starting pitching back on a better note. And let me tell you something. To start this game, at least, Carlos Rodon looked about as good as I've ever seen him at any point in his career. And I was thinking how unbelievable that was because Carlos Rodon, especially when it comes to his time on the Yankees, we know him to be a little bit of a wild card. In 2023, he spent most of the season hurt, and then when he came back, he was absolutely terrible. Then in 2024, he spent the first couple of months looking absolutely terrific and the exact kind of a pitcher the Yankees signed to be that 1A to Garrett Cole. Then he had that 1 month stretch from mid-June to mid to late-ish July where he looked like one of the worst pitchers in Major League Baseball once again. Then he bounced back in the second half towards the later part of the season to look much better most of the time. He still had his little share of rough starts until the end in the second half, but he finished off looking like the Rodon that we all were praying for forever once again. So he didn't really even know what to expect of him 100% necessarily heading into Game 2. You just hope that he provided a more stable start than the Yankees had seen a couple of nights prior with Garrett Cole. And again, it would start out that way because the first couple of innings, once again, I mean, just amongst the best I have ever seen from him. In the first inning, he struck out the side. He was throwing 98 and 99 miles an hour, all pumped up after each and every single strikeout, going absolutely nuts, talking to himself as he circled the mound like a hawk after each and every strikeout of Michael Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino. He was losing his damn mind going around that mound. And he comes out in the second inning, and while he does give up a hit to Michael Massey, again, just quick outs with Perez, Gurriel, struck out Tommy Pham to end the top of the second, so of the first 6 outs, 4 of them were strikeouts. I mean, he was looking like he was going to run this thing, especially with Yankee Stadium going as insane as it was and just all the energy surrounding the game and surrounding the ballpark. I was like, oh my God, this might actually be Carlos Rodon's time to shine when it matters most. This can't be going any better. Top of the third, he got into a bit more trouble, but still struck out Hunter Renfroe to start the inning. Then he would give up a couple of hits, and then he would get Bobby Witt Jr. to ground into a force out. There was a bit of a jam. And then Pasquantino hits a screaming line drive to right field. Fortunately, it was right at Soto. So a little bit more of a nerve-wracking inning there in the third inning, but still got out of it scoreless. Bottom of the third comes around, and the Yankees give him that 1-0 lead. Finally, that lead that he gets rewarded with after looking so good, especially in the first two, but also getting out of trouble in the third. So they rewarded him with a nice 1-0 lead right away. And then, unfortunately, what Yankee pitchers tend to do a lot of the time, unfortunately, right away in the top of the fourth, right after being given that lead, Garrett Cole definitely did this a lot in Game 1, you saw. And we saw this theme a lot with Yankee pitchers throughout the season at times, unfortunately, as well. He gives it right back by giving up an absolute tank to Salvador Perez to tie the game at 1 to start the top of the fourth right away. Perez has owned Rodon whenever he has faced him, and that continued here. And then after that, the Royals would do all of their scoring for the day, all in the fourth inning. By the time it was done, it was 4-1. They had the lead. The Yankee offense went dead silent after that, only scoring one more run on a solo shot by Jazz Chisholm to lead off the bottom of the ninth. They would go down beyond quietly right after that, despite Jazz trying to hype them all up. Only John Birdie would get a single the opposite way to right field, and Gleyber Torres would ground out right after that to end the game. So the Yankees would end up losing Game 2 by a score of 4-2. This is just a broad brush over the games. We'll get into the details in a little bit, but yeah, mainly Rodon being the story, just imploding in the fourth inning, and it maybe had you feeling a little bit uneasy with the third inning he had, but I mean, he still got out of trouble in that inning. But the final line just isn't it. I mean, you could say he overexerted himself and just let the adrenaline and all of his energy and intense mindset get to him too much in the first couple of innings to where he just fizzled out and just became a mess in the fourth inning and even showed a little bit of iffiness in the third inning, for lack of a better term. But you could say that, or you could just say that he had his usual implosion that he has at times. He has a tendency to do this. He just implodes. Final line was 3 2/3, had to be taken out in the middle of the fourth. Couldn't even escape that inning on his own, unfortunately, to follow. 7 hits, 4 runs, all in that fourth. No walks, so that's good. And 7 strikeouts, those mostly being had in the first couple innings alone. It's sad. He can't keep the ball in the ballpark. He can never have a start where he allows no home runs. He's always got to allow at least one, it feels like. It's so rare he throws a shutout and doesn't allow a home run at one point or another throughout a start. And he just didn't go nearly as deep into the game as I was hoping he would, and that the Yankees were probably hoping that he would, despite having all their days off and the bullpen being beyond fresh. Because even after all the arms they had to use after Game 1 with Cole only going 5 innings, they had a day off the day before, a day off that didn't make any sense to me, honestly, on Sunday, as we remember. But they still had the day off, so everything reset, but he still didn't go nearly as deep as we all hoped he would have. The bullpen kept the team in the game. They didn't allow the Royals to score any more runs. None. I mean, I guess you can say that Ian Hamilton, who came in after Rodon to try to get out of the fourth, he did allow that hit to Garcia that would end up driving home Hampson, who was a bit of a pest in this series, honestly. But other than that, obviously that run was not charged to Hamilton. It was charged to Rodon, as he deserved to. So other than that, the bullpen was absolutely flawless, and that is definitely a point I'm going to get to in a second, the bullpen in this series. So the Yankees would lose that one, split at home, and then head on the road back to Kansas City. And just like that game was close within 2 runs, the final 2 games would also be very close as well. And I had a feeling it would, because the Royals tend to have very good pitching, and the Yankee offense typically does not do too well against that. But as long as their rotation gives even a respectable start, the Yankee bullpen is trustworthy, especially as of the end of the season into the playoffs, as we saw in the division series especially. So you imagine that while there's a lot of good pitching to go around, there's probably not going to be too much scoring. And that's a theme that we very much saw in this series. The Yankees winning 3-2 on Wednesday for Game 3, and then 3-1 on Thursday for Game 4, and you had Clark Schmidt starting Game 3 on Wednesday. I guess I'm really just hitting on starting pitching mainly for this one, because, I mean, it was a big topic, especially to start the series with Cole and Rodon really just not getting the job done. Well, they announced that Clark Schmidt was going to get the ball in Game 3, and I actually really trusted Clark, because I really liked how he looked since he has gotten off the injured list, as we know, and I trusted him, and he didn't disappoint. I mean, I know at the very end things got a little iffy, and the Yankee offense had only put up a couple of runs, so the couple of runs that were given up at the very end of his outing were good enough to just tie the game, and then you're all nervous at that point, obviously, but still enough to ultimately get the job done. And in the first 4, and then even to start the 5th, 4 or 5 innings, Schmidt looked really good, guys. He really did. Worked a 1-2-3 easily in the bottom of the first, very efficiently. Only allowed that double to Gurriel in the bottom of the second, otherwise he looked fantastic in that inning as well. In the bottom of the third, he was very efficient, striking out Adam Frazier. He did hit Isbell with a pitch, but got Massey to ground into a double play right after that, so no harm, no foul at all. Other than walking Pasquantino in the bottom of the 4th, he struck out Witt, got Perez to fly out, got Gurriel to fly out, so another scoreless inning. And then in the bottom of the 5th, he got the first 2 outs fine, but then after that was when things got a little bit hairy, because then Frazier gets on with 2 outs and nobody on, so he gets on base. And then all of a sudden, Kyle Isbell channels his inner Ichiro Suzuki that I never knew he had, reaching out for an up-and-away fastball and slashing it right down the left field line. That made it 2-1 on an RBI double, and then Massey after that got an RBI triple into the gap. So that tied the game at 2. So up until the very, very end there, Clark was looking great. But they took him out after that happened, obviously. Clay Holmes, who I have to do some talking about later on as well. Clay Holmes would finish off that 5th inning, and Yankees pitching once again, the bullpen had it scoreless all the way to the end for the Yankees to score that one more run in the top of the 8th, ultimately, to give them a 3-2 victory. And then in Game 4, a lot of the same, a lot of quiet. Only won 3-1. Starting that game was Garrett Cole, Once again, second start of the series. Again, I did think that he was going to bounce back in this outing. He very much did. So it's good to see that after the first 2 games, starting pitching didn't get it done, that in the final 2, it did get it done. Clark Schmidt's final line being 4 2/3 in Game 3. 4 2/3, just 4 hits allowed. Multiple of them just in that 5th inning alone at the very end of his outing. Those 2 runs, again, at the very end of the outing. Just 1 walk and 4 Ks. Not a bad outing at all, honestly. Especially considering it was his first playoff start. So, you consider that, it's pretty big. It was the biggest start of his life, no doubt about that. It's unfortunate that at the very end, the Royals tied the game, but I was still very happy with the job that Clark did. And then when you consider the pressure on Garrett Cole, I wasn't too worried about him because I really had a feeling he'd bounce back, but the pressure on him to do so, especially on the road, and just really continue to redeem the starting pitching that they hadn't seen, at least at the start of the series. And he really delivered with 7 innings of just 1-run ball, guys. 6 hits, 1 run, no walks. Didn't walk a single person. 4 strikeouts, pitch to contact at times, but it allowed him to be efficient and make it that far into the game. Pitch count was great all throughout. He definitely did get some help from the wind. I do have to be honest, because, yeah, this was almost a disaster. But that night in Kansas City for Game 4, the wind was whipping around the stadium so severely that it was actually taking multiple feet off of fly balls. Depending on where in the field it was hit, certain areas of the field were being affected more than others. But my God, I think at one point in right field, I think the wind was taking the ball in 12 feet rather than what it would ordinarily be without any breeze, which is insane. And it really did have a huge outcome here for Cole, because at the very end of his outing, with Tommy Pham on base, who just really had Cole's number, and the Yankees' number overall, I guess he just likes to kill them. But no matter what Cole gave him, a fastball outside, a fastball up and in, an off-speed or breaking ball, low and away, Pham just hit the ball. So with 2 outs and no one on, Pham got a hit in the bottom of the 7th. And then Kyle Isbell, on a breaking ball, ropes one to right field. Off the bat, I thought it was gone. I thought it was so far gone, it wasn't even worth looking at the television. I was just winding my arm up to just absolutely send my remote through the beautiful television we have out in our family room. But then all of a sudden, Soto starts to slow down on the track, and then he makes the catch right at the fence. Guys, you look at this ball on replay, in case you didn't already see it, you watch this replay off the bat. If you've been watching baseball for even just a year or two and you're a newer fan, you would know that off the bat, this ball looked like it was headed for another planet. Yet Soto made the catch at the wall. Oh my God, it was undoubtedly the wind. They were talking about it all night. And then at the apex of this game, in the biggest moment of Cole's outing here, Isbell hits one so high and far, you're thinking that it's affecting maybe 10 to 12 feet, the wind is, with the ball out there in right field. You see how far this is hit, and the fact that Soto catches it right at the fence. Talk about home field shooting yourself in the face. How about that? Playing in your own stadium, probably happy to be there, got the backing of your loud, passionate fans there. And Mother Nature, because of your stadium and maybe the location of it, just that night with the weather, just destroys you when Cole has been annihilating you the whole night. If you're the Royals, the wind defeats you. Oh my gosh. So, considering how much the wind was affecting it, again, at least 10 to 12 feet of distance was affected by the wind with this ball and any other ball that was hit out there for most of the game to right field. And Soto catching it right at the fence. If there was no wind, guys, that was a game-tying home run in the bottom of the 7th, and who knows what would have happened after that. Maybe my prediction of them having to go 5 would have come true. Who freaking knows? We'll never know, because thanks to the wind, the Yankees escaped that with their 3-1 lead still intact. Oh my gosh, and Cole got to finish off his 7 innings of 1-run spectacular ball. My God, would that have been awful if there was no wind, though. But you count your blessings that there was wind, and they escaped with their lead. No more scoring would happen throughout the game. The bullpen would bring it home after that. Yankees win 3-1 and move on. Take a listen for yourself from the sleep-inducing Bob Costas.
In the air to center field. Judge has it lined up, and the Yankees are on their way to the ALCS.
calm down, Bob. You'll give yourself a heart attack. I mean, my God, you would think that a 110-loss team just won a random game in the middle of August. They'll make the catch, and the Yankees are moving on to the American League Championship Series. Oh, my. Let me tell you something. I have the utmost respect for Bob Costas when it comes to him doing pre-taped stuff like documentaries and any program on the history of baseball where, you know, a nice soothing voice like that and really recognizable, iconic, and legendary old-style voice is appropriate for that given material. I get it, and I have the utmost respect for him and everything he's accomplished in the broadcasting world, but my God, especially at the end of his career here, guys, who thought that it was a good idea to have this man be play-by-play for a Major League Baseball postseason series of any kind in the year 2024? Bob has got to stick with the pre-recorded stuff. The live stuff ain't it. And not to be disrespectful, but I could not be happier that the Yankees and the Guardians are free of him in the ALCS. I've heard that they're going to get Brian Anderson, the guy who commentated for Detroit and Cleveland. My God, I hope so. I've heard that that's the case, but I cannot do another minute of Bob, man. I just can't. I cannot do it. Whoever thought of that as a good idea, they should be fired immediately and banished from the broadcasting world, the media world, from ever making decisions ever again. And poor Ron Darling, who was his color guy throughout the series, he was trying so hard. I know some people were being hard on Ron, saying that he wasn't doing anything to help the remainder of the broadcast that was already awful because of Bob Costas, but I mean, usually a color guy bounces off what the play-by-play guy does. I've done play-by-play and color, so I would know this for college sports. But still, the principle remains the same no matter what level you're doing it at. The color guy bounces off the play-by-play guy. The play-by-play guy drives the car, and the color guy is the passenger. And if the driver needs help with anything, then the passenger helps out. Because he's available, he's right there, bouncing off you, back and forth. You know the deal. And if you want a different scenario because you're a stickler about the car example, well then think of the play-by-play guy like the captain of the boat, and the color guy is his first mate. You know what the color guy's supposed to do. Ron Darling had nothing to work with here, folks. Nothing. Even that play up the middle that Bob Costas thought was a line drive up the middle and Volpe makes a diving catch barely past the infield dirt. Costas called it a base hit into center field. And Ron's got to play that off too. Like, what's he supposed to do? Like, I felt bad for him. So poor Ron Darling, I hope the next time we see him in the booth, he's partnered with somebody better if it's not Keith Hernandez or Gary Cohen or anything like that. But he really had little to nothing to work with. So, I mean, I can't really blame the guy. I felt bad. Bob is the culprit here. He just did a disastrous job. The guy should never commentate for a live baseball game ever again. It's done. Enough with Bob Costas. Just got to say that with the series being done with. I mean, I was already saying and thinking this after game one, but it just got worse and worse as the series went along. If I heard him say one more thing about Stanton 2, my God, I don't even remember which game it was. It might have been game 3. But if I heard him one more time say about how Giancarlo Stanton is not the player that he once was, he can't run well, he can't really run at all, it's not his fault. If I heard him say that one more time, other than like the 7 or 8 times that he continued to say it throughout the game, with God as my witness, I was going to go in my backyard and bury myself alive. I think I even tweeted that a few days ago. I was serious. I was going to go bury myself alive in the backyard. Thank God it's done. I think it's done. Heard from most people that it's done. And if it is, thank Jesus. Because I can't do another game with this guy commentating. I just can't. But otherwise, that was the ultimate outcome of the series. Yankees moving on. But when it comes to getting down to the nitty-gritty, really getting into the in-depth details of what won this series for the Yankees, first and foremost, the credit has got to go to the bullpen. The bullpen was absolutely stellar in this series, no matter what game you talk about, whether it be in game 1 after they finished off the remaining 4 innings, Whether you talk about Game 2, when they had to eat up all remaining 5 2/3 innings after Rodon was done. Whether you want to talk about the 4 1/3 innings of shutout baseball when Schmidt was done in Game 3, and then bringing it home after Garrett Cole's phenomenal start in Game 4. The bullpen was terrific. They went 15 2/3 innings in the series, folks. 15 2/3 without allowing a single earned run.
Holy crap!
Correct, Frank Barone. The definition of dominance. And even individually, number of names I want to mention here when it comes to how amazing the bullpen really was. The Yankees did only carry 11 pitchers in the division series, most of them belonging to the bullpen, of course, and just about every single one of them made their presence known. You had Ian Hamilton. Other than that run that was charged to Rodon that he allowed to score, looked fine in that one appearance he had 3 strikeouts in an inning and a third. Jake Cousins was probably the one that just really didn't get too many looks otherwise because obviously he had just come back from being hurt and was just activated just in time for the American League Division Series to start, so he didn't really get that much time to show what he had, but got 1 out, allowing 1 walk. Tim Hill, in the 1 inning total that he pitched in his 2 appearances, did just fine, came through when they needed him to. Even Tim Meza, in the 1 appearance that he had, didn't even look bad at all either. He did give up his 1 hit, but otherwise, nothing really bad happened there. The main group in the back that I have got to continue to give credit for, as I was for all the weeks following up to the end of the season, with the exception of one guy. I'll start with him, being Clay Holmes. I wasn't giving him credit up until the end of the season because he was still doing badly. But as of this series, it's going to blow a lot of you away that I'm doing this, but listen, you guys know that as hard as I am on some guys, when they deserve to be given their credit, I give it. No matter how hard I was on that specific person at any given time. Clay Holmes deserves all of the accolades in the world for how he did in the division series. I don't know how he's going to do in the championship series. It could very well go the complete other way. But as far as his division series performance, unreal. He came in high leverage moments like the Yankees promised that he would, that had us all on the edge of our seats, ready to just about shoot ourselves in the mouth. Well, they stuck to their guns, and Clay Holmes actually came the hell through. He had 4 appearances, 5 innings worth of pitching in those 4 appearances with 3 strikeouts, not a run allowed, especially in that final appearance in Game 4. He looked just terrific. Absolutely terrific. There were some pitches that he still missed in the dirt with his sinker and whatnot at times, and, that's inevitable. He throws the way he does, and he's going to miss badly at times. I understand that. But my God, he was dotting them like I haven't seen from him in a long time. How he struck Garcia out with that 98-mile-an-hour paint on the outside corner for pitch number 5 in that at-bat. Might have been the nicest sinker I've seen him throw in months, honestly. Really, really terrific stuff. Michael Massey did hit a line drive off him right after that, but was right to Verdugo, and then he got Bobby Witt Jr. to ground out to Volpe. Again, another scoreless inning from him. Absolutely terrific. So, Clay Holmes, great ALDS. Absolutely terrific. And one of the reasons, definitely, as far as the back end of the bullpen, that the Yankees were able to come out on top ultimately with how great the bullpen did. He was right at the forefront of it, which I did not expect in the slightest, but it was a reality. Then you have Mr. Canely, Tommy Canely, who spent the vast majority of the 2024 season, as we know, just being absolutely terrific. He carried that into the American League Division Series. 3 appearances, each going 1 inning with 3 strikeouts. Changeup was terrific. Even when he uses his slider, which he almost never pulls out, and his fastball, which he rarely pulls out, he's primarily just using that changeup. Regardless of what the man does, he gets the job done. He just looked amazing. Really, really amazing. Tommy has been such a valuable secret weapon out in that bullpen. Very underappreciated, not spoken about enough, if you ask me. That's why I always try to give him the praise that he has deserved for months and months now. And after the division series, he deserves even more of it. Definitely another huge aspect of it. And lastly, I can't talk about the bullpen without talking about Luke Weaver. We all know Luke was thrust into the closer role down the line when the Yankees finally had the gall to give up on Clay Holmes and everybody else had given up on him in the closer role months prior. But Luke Weaver took up this role, and he took it up with a Warriors mindset and with the utmost of grace possible, just going out there and being untouchable. In the American League Division Series, 4 games, 4 1/3 innings pitched, 5 strikeouts, just wouldn't really let anybody get a leg up on him no matter what the situation was. Ask him to get 4 outs, 5 outs, just 1 inning, it doesn't matter. The guy got the job done. You want to talk about what he's done, not only in the American League Division Series, but in that last September run when he was thrust into the closer role, and even a little bit before that even. Since September 6th, they had this graphic on MLB Network. I just had to snapshot it to read it out on this show because it was so incredible to me. Since September 6th, in 12 games, this includes the playoffs, he has thrown 15 1/3 innings, which is 1 out short of what the entire Yankee bullpen threw in the American League Division Series when they had went completely scoreless. Well, very similar here. In 15 1/3 innings, a 0 ERA, 0. 29 strikeouts, almost doubling the innings pitched. With only 3 walks, the opponent batting average was 115, with the opponent's OPS, on base and slugging, being under 300. At 298. Again, you want to talk about the definition of dominance, the overall title I gave to the entire Yankee bullpen. It's really encapsulated by Luke Weaver. This guy has been remarkable. Again, not only in the division series, but since September started just about. And throughout the vast majority of the season, he really had a terrific season overall. But especially in the last month and a half, my God, find me a better relief pitcher, and I will counter with Luke Weaver. This kid is a warrior. Even how amped up he was after they got the last out at the end of Game 4, my God, don't move this kid from the closer role, please. Don't change a thing about it. Unreal what this kid has done. So whether it be holding a deficit within reason and not letting a game get out of hand, or whether it be preserving a lead, just keeping the team close, regardless of what the job was that the bullpen had at any given moment in any given game throughout the American League Division Series, in my opinion, the bullpen is the biggest reason why the Yankees were able to move on from this series, and that is why I mentioned them first and foremost when it comes to the in-depth details. When it comes to the starting rotation, I will say that ultimately for the rest of the series, it bounced back nicely. After talking about how they did earlier, I do think that Garrett Cole obviously bounced back phenomenally in Game 4, which was huge, not only for himself when it comes to bouncing back and making up for his Game 1 performance, but also to prevent the series from having to come back home to Yankee Stadium, which I was really hoping the Yankees would prevent from happening, and I'm glad that they did, and it was mainly thanks to Garrett Cole on that night, despite getting a little bit of help from the wind again, but still, the conditions were the conditions. I mean, it was the same thing for the Yankees as well. They probably had a few hits that could very well have done more damage, but it was knocked down by the wind too. Give and take. That's life, not only just sports, but nonetheless, glad that he was able to do that and really helped pick up the pitching, the starting pitching at least, in that sense. And I thought Clark Schmidt, again in Game 3, aside from the very, very end of his outing there, I thought Clark looked absolutely terrific, and I'm still willing to trust him with the ball in just about any game against any opponent for the rest of the playoffs, because I love how he has looked since he come off the injured list, like I said before, and I loved how he looked right up until the very end of his outing in his first ever playoff start with the pressure the way that it was. Game 3, series tied, on the road, and he still went out there and pitched the way that he did. So I am very much trusting Clark Schmidt's ability as we move through the playoffs here, even throughout his next outing. I can't wait to see him pitch again, see what he's got in his next outing against the Guardians. But the starting rotation, while it definitely started out badly with Cole's Game 1 performance and Rodon's crappy Game 2 performance ultimately in the 4th inning, where he just absolutely imploded right after the Yankees gave him a lead, starting pitching fortunately bounced back nicely as the series continued. With the offense, honestly, guys, while there are definitely some guys who did a very nice job and certainly helped the Yankees score their low amount of runs that they had, especially when it comes to Game 2 and forward, but there's really one guy that jumps out. And I'm so glad that it's him. It's not even really unexpected because we know that this guy loves to turn it on in October, the most important time. And I'm so glad that he made his return. His playoff version made his return the way that it did in this series after Game 1, because he really did little to nothing in Game 1, having people really just ready to throw the towel in on him. And even I was admitting, well, Game 1 was really ugly, but I was still willing to give him some wiggle room, knowing how he usually is in October. And in Game 2, he made a little bit of a hint that he was starting to show up, and then when it came to hitting the road in Games 3 and 4, he full-on bursted out onto the scene. And in my opinion, again, while there are other names to mention who also contributed, he was the main factor as to why the Yankees, from an offensive standpoint, were able to move on. And that behemoth that I alluded to before is none other than Mr. Giancarlo Stanton. Take a listen, if you can, keeping your eyes open and staying conscious while you're listening to Bob Costas deliver some riveting commentary on play-by-play. Take a listen to a montage of some of playoff Stanton's humongous moments that he had from Games 2 to 4, and there were definitely a few of them.
At shortstop, Witt. It ate him up. Torres being waved home. Witt retrieves it, throws to the plate, offline, and the Yankees have the lead. Hit through the middle. Boy, they just cannot handle Stanton. And it's 3-0 Yankees. Almost imperceptible. Stanton hits one well in the gap at left center field, and that's going to get down. Soto heading for third and being waved home. The peg to the plate is late. It's an RBI double for Stanton, who pumps his fist as he arrives at second base, and the Yanks jump in front, 1-0. High fly ball, deep left field. Back goes Melendez. Forget about it. It's gone.
Quiet! Oh, sorry. I must have dozed off. I don't know. Sorry about that. Sorry, listeners, and Johnny Lawrence, too, I guess. Audio and courtesy of TBS. Yeah, TBS, that's right. I'm being a little disrespectful now, aren't I? Anyway, yeah, so those were all of the moments for Giancarlo Stanton throughout the American League Division Series. Some real key hits in some really huge spots that ended up making the difference in the Yankees moving on or actually being in some really deep trouble. That huge home run, the RBI double, the big RBI single that would give the Yankees a convincing 3-0 lead in that final game there. Even the first run of the game in Game 2 before the Carlos Rodon implosion in the top of the 4th. When the Yankees' offense was seemingly dead, he came through there. That was his first hint of playoff Stanton returning. And my God, for the rest of the series, as you heard, did he ever return? And again, it was especially huge in Game 3 because Game 3 was a heart attack-inducing, tense game. And he just went insane. He went 3 for 5 with the go-ahead solo shot. That was the home run you heard. That was in the 8th inning of that game. And in this game, get this. You're not imagining this. He even had a stolen base.
Holy crap!
Yeah, if there ever was a revelation more deserving of a holy crap than that, then please let me know what it is. Giancarlo Stanton, stolen base. My God. And all of this happening, again, amidst a Game 3 where it was really important for it to happen, because you want to talk about the context of Game 3 as well. I mean, so much crap happened in this game, so for Giancarlo Stanton to show up the way that he did amidst all of that happening was so important. Oh my God, the horrible calls, the umpire, between Volpe being called out at first when Gurriel had to jump off the base a bit when receiving that throw. Volpe on replay was safe. The Yankees never even challenged. Glaber's foul ball was a fair ball. I don't even want to hear any debate or argument at all on that. It was a fair ball. Blown by the umpire who was right there on the line. Replay blew it too. I don't even understand how an umpire can blow any call on the line in the playoffs because they even have umpires in the outfield for the playoffs. My God. And then you even had judges check swing later on in the game. Didn't go around and they said he did. So, listen, the Royals had that Jazz stolen base play in Game 1 in a big spot. Well, the Yanks did last night too on multiple occasions. So, I don't even want to hear it. The Yankees, to their credit, still managed to come out with the W, even though it seemed like it was them against the entire world and all of its karma in this freaking game. Mainly, again, thanks to Giancarlo Stanton. So, if there was ever a time for him to show up in the face of all of the Yankees' negative karma trying to come back to bite them and stop them from winning this freaking game, oh my God. What a mess. Whew. So, yeah, you want to talk about craziness happening in that one. My God. So, Stanton coming through there when he was absolutely needed, especially with that huge home run late to put them in the lead 3-2 so the bullpen can finish it off. But staying on the track of offense, you had Giancarlo, of course, who, yes, I am done glazing now, but I had to because it was warranted. He had that good of a series, and in my opinion is the main offensive reason the Yankees moved on. Then you had Gleyber Torres, who again got a big RBI single in the top of the fifth of Game 4 to put the Yankees up 2-0 at the time. Had a lot of walks in this series. Got a lot of innings and a lot of rallies started, which is his job as the leadoff man, being the table setter, so he did a good job with that. Not really a lot of hits quantity-wise, but the quality of his appearances in which he came through, they were huge, and he still did his job. Had that big home run in Game 1 as well, like we spoke about last week. I mean, you could tell by how much he was on base because his OPS was 867, mainly thanks to how much he was on base via walk or any other method he could possibly think of doing. So Gleyber certainly deserves credit. Juan Soto had himself a nice series as well. Drove in a couple of runs himself throughout the series, including the very first run instantaneously at the very start of Game 4 off Michael Wacha, when Gleyber Torres had started things off with a double and then Soto drove him right in. So Soto had himself a nice series overall. Hope he continues that into the next round. And I'm going to have to give credit to another guy, and some people may be surprised by this because his stats don't blow you out of the water necessarily, but he did do something that was an improvement over what he had been doing for the vast majority of the 2024 season. And that is be smart at the plate and make solid contact. The man I speak of course, is Anthony Volpe. And all of those things that I just mentioned that he did for a lot of the division series, a lot of that is not what he did throughout a chunk of the 2024 season. Most of it, the vast majority of it, in fact. And he did do just that, made a lot of solid contact, even if some of them were outs. And most importantly, I do have to give him a lot of credit for getting on base, which is another thing he really didn't do a good job at because he just stopped walking and just, I don't know, for most of 2024, just didn't do a lot of the good things that we saw some true potential for. But in this series, he really did. His on-base percentage for the division series was .438. He walked 4 times, and he limited the strikeouts and made a lot of solid contact. So I will say that while he still wasn't like stellar or anything, he definitely wasn't a bigger reason why they won over someone like Juan Soto or Gleyber Torres, especially Giancarlo Stanton, but he still had himself a nice series. He was a little iffy in the field, that's for sure, especially in the start of the series, which was really pissing me off because I was saying if you're not going to hit, then you've got to at least field, and that was even starting to take a little bit of a hit there. But especially later on in the series, but on an overall level, the offense did come back a bit. He was making his presence known by getting on base more often, and that was definitely a big positive for Volpe and very much needed, to say the least. So I do have to give Volpe his credit as well for at least getting on base because that's very important in the playoffs. There's not going to be a lot of scoring because you're facing probably some of the best pitching that the game has to offer. That's why more often than not, you're going to see more low-scoring affairs in the playoffs, and that's what you've seen for most of history. So even though it may seem like a small thing, at least getting on base and giving your team any chance it could get to put some runs up on the board to the best of your ability is very important. And Volpe did offer a lot of that throughout this series by just merely getting on base more often. Even John Birdie did a very nice job in this series, honestly. Both him and Cabrera played a great first base defensively. And Birdie even did pretty well at the plate. He was getting some hits here and there, cracking some the other way, and just, I don't know, getting on base. Did a decent job. But especially on defense, I got to give it to both him and Waldo. They have both been working very hard, learning first base, I do have to say, especially Birdie, which is even more impressive first times playing there, but he has looked amazing. And Waldo has come a long way there. His versatility is truly so valuable. It's not even funny. And they both did a terrific job defensively there at first base, did what they had to do on offense whenever they could. So, honestly, a decent amount of bats at least did okay. It was to be expected that they weren't great because the Royals came in. We knew they were coming in having some good pitching. And we know the tendency that the Yankee offense has at times. We do, unfortunately. They tend to go out there and lay an egg a decent chunk of the time at the very least, especially when it comes to facing good pitching. But you know what? This time, they bared down. They did just enough to win in some of these games, which is all you could ask for, especially in the playoffs. A win is a win, no matter how ugly it is and how much you want to talk about certain aspects that could be improved, which is perfectly valid to talk about, as I outlined very strongly in last week's episode. But nonetheless, a win is a win, and the offense did enough to get the job done in each and every one of these games, in big spots no less. So the team gelled together to be able to get the job done, especially on the road when it counted, and prevented this series from having to come back to Yankee Stadium. A few things on offense, things that I wasn't happy to really see. Unfortunately, Alex Verdugo, who was Game 1's hero, no doubt about it, especially at least one of them, but he unfortunately returned to being, well, he was still very helpful in left field defensively, no doubt about that. Can't say anything negatively about that. But from an offensive standpoint, unfortunately returned to being the non-factor that he was for the vast majority of the 2024 season after that Game 1. In Games 2, 3, and 4 combined, he would go 1 for 11, really did little to nothing at all in the remaining plate appearances that he had after Game 1. A lot of them featured ground outs to the right side of the infield, which is what we saw for what feels like 98% of the 2024 season. So, unfortunately, at least from an offensive standpoint, Verdugo returned to what we mainly knew him to be. Defensively, still fine, and we're probably going to be seeing him starting in left field again in the championship series. We didn't see Dominguez at all in this series whatsoever. We'll see how they continue to manage this going forward, but especially based off of what Boone and the Yankees continue to say, saying that Verdugo's likely going to be out there once again starting in left field for the championship series, I would expect to see that again, starting right away tomorrow night, whether you like that or not. Another guy that really disappeared was Jazz Chisholm. Honestly, other than his bottom of the ninth inning home run down by 3 in Game 2, Jazz did absolutely nothing in this series. He did have some shining moments defensively, which is always nice considering he's playing third base for the first time in his life, and it's good to see him continue to improve there. So no doubt about that, I won't refute that. But when it comes to what he did in this round, offensively, he did nothing, to put it mildly. Outside of that home run down by 3, he had that one hit in the first game. Totally in the series, he was 2 for 15. And he had walked only once, otherwise. He talked a lot of crap after that play, that stolen base play in the first game. And after he went to the media and said the Royals got lucky, this and that, after Game 2 and whatnot, the Royals fans were really getting on him and ragging on him. They were booing him loudly, really just egging him on and busting his chops throughout the remainder of the series in Games 3 and 4 on the road in KC there. And usually, unfortunately, when the Yankees tend to talk trash about any other team or any individual player, unfortunately in the last few years in this regime that they've had in the last 7-8 years or so, whenever they tend to do that, when it comes to backing it up on the field, unfortunately for the Yankees, they tend to lay a big fat egg when it comes to doing that and not doing anything about it and making themselves looking really foolish for shooting their mouths off in the first place. Unfortunately for Jazz Chisholm, he joined the crowd in doing that because he talked all that crap. And in those last 2 games, he went 0 for 7 and showed absolutely no sign of life at the plate whatsoever. I mean, he did have his one walk in the last game, but I mean, with all the stuff that he talked, I mean, I appreciate it. I mean, it's funny. Oh, they got lucky. Oh, I've never heard anybody boo a bum before. You know, it's good statements, but like it would add to it if you like went out on the field and made your bat do some more talking for you, like even more strong talking for you, to say the least. That would have been nice. But it wasn't meant to be. He did absolutely next to nothing in this series, really. So I was a little disappointed to see that, and I hope he bounces back in the championship series. Because from a hitting standpoint, while the Yankees definitely have a bunch more heavy hitters in the lineup to do their work for them, it would be nice to see Jazz Chisholm, their only offensive pickup at this year's deadline, really join the party here. It would certainly be nice to see that. The biggest talking point, aside from Austin Wells at catcher also doing absolutely nothing, which I was upset about, honestly. I expected Wells to have a very big series, and to be honest with you, after the first 2 games, it was starting to look like he would have one. Because he had those 2 big RBIs in the first game. He went 1 for 3, and he had walked twice as well. But in games 2, 3, and 4, I mean, he did have 1 hit in game 2, so I guess fine, whatever. But especially in 3 and 4, guys, Wells was brutal. Oh, my God. He had dropped that ball right in front of the wall behind the plate as well, defensively. Otherwise, defensively, I guess he was all right. He had a few really bad throws down to second base. He had one that really hit nicely, nailed it. But otherwise, he just overall had a really bad, especially last couple of games in Kansas City. He did absolutely nothing, and he really dragged down that cleanup spot, which is bad. You know, right in the middle of the lineup, just killing rallies and just bad baseball being played by Austin Wells, especially in games 3 and 4. I was really hoping that, especially after all the rest, because they were talking about, oh, maybe he's tired. He's caught more games than he ever has, especially at the professional level. I mean, maybe it was just wearing on him. I was hoping that those 5 days off between game 162 and the start of this series would have done him well, and it seemed to have done that for game 1 at least, and maybe a little bit of game 2 since he had that 1 hit, but I mean, otherwise, not a good series for Austin Wells. It was very upsetting to me. I hope he does better in the championship series. They need him. Especially if he's going to be right there in the middle of the lineup, batting cleanup. They definitely need him if he's going to be batting there. I would consider a lineup change when it comes to that if this continues this badly, because, you know, you don't have too much time to fool around, especially in the playoffs. And with the way Stanton's doing, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about wanting to hit him behind Aaron Judge, and I can't really blame people for wanting that with the way he's doing. The playoff Stanton we all know and love would provide that much more protection for Judge, too. But speaking of the captain, Aaron Judge, we spoke about all of the negativity surrounding him, with people mentioning what he has tended to do, or I guess you could also say not do, in the playoffs, at least since like 2020 or 2021. Because before that, he had his handful of really big playoff moments. I mean, we talked all about it last week. If you want to hear my Aaron Judge playoff takeaways, then listen to last week's episode 238. I went in on it towards the, well, I guess more towards the beginning part of the show. So go back and listen back to that if you want to hear that, if you didn't already. But we spoke all about that, and that was after Game 1. Games 2 and 3, unfortunately, with a lot of the negativity surrounding Aaron Judge and his playoff performances, that did continue. He did little to nothing, grounding into double plays, striking out constantly on pitches he usually crushes a lot of the time. And it was making me miserable because I love Judge, and I want to see him succeed at all times, especially in the playoffs, because we know that he is legit one of the best players of all time. I think it's safe to say, from an offensive standpoint, even what he provides defensively too, but especially offensively when it comes to the regular season. You want that to carry into the playoffs so he could also be an October legend and maybe even help carry the Yankees to a title, which would really make him truly immortal, as we all know. We all want that of him and for him. But my God, yeah, the first 3 games, I mean, I know he had a hit in the October 7th game in Game 2, when they had lost, but just not nearly enough to justify what else he did. He had 3 strikeouts in Game 1 that we spoke about, had the hit in Game 2, but then Game 3, he looked really bad. Game 4, though, I am happy to say that he had his first good playoff game in quite some time. Because he did manage to go 1 for 2, had that double to start the top of the 6th, which is very important. It can't be understated, because that did ultimately end up with Giancarlo Stanton getting a base hit up the middle and driving him in for the 3rd run of the game. So that did mean something. So he had that double, couple of walks to go along with it. So he was on base 3 times, was 1 for 2. So he had a pretty good game in Game 4, which is encouraging. And I pray to God that he carries that into the championship series and hopefully even into the World Series if they get there. Because obviously it goes without saying that the Yankees can only go so far if Aaron Judge is going to be a non-factor in the playoffs. They can only go so far. So I hope it continues to carry along with what happened in Game 4. That would be awesome, because it was his first good game in a while in the playoffs, as we established, and I only hope and pray that that continues. It was nice to finally see him break through there, because the first 3 games, while I wasn't nearly ready to give up on him or anything, please don't get me wrong there, it just was not fun to watch in the slightest, and I was getting on edge, to say the least, as I think it's safe to say just about anybody else did, because it's the playoffs, it's crunch time, and you want your captain at least helping to lead the way here. So it was good to finally see that in Game 4, and it was a big talking point, and I hope it continues. But otherwise, guys, yeah, that was really getting in-depth on what happened in the American League Division Series, just about with every aspect of the team and what happened in the games. Again, not a high-scoring series because, well, in Game 2, you had Giancarlo Stanton with that RBI single in the infield with Bobby Witt in the bottom of the 3rd, and then just Jazz's solo shot in the bottom of the 9th. In Game 3, they only had scored 3 runs. You had Soto's sac fly, and then the other 2 by Giancarlo Stanton on his RBI double and solo shot. And then on Thursday, you had Soto and Glaber's RBI singles, followed by Giancarlo Stanton's RBI single. And that was all the scoring. So low scoring, but it gets the job done, as you often see in the playoffs, guys. And on we go to the American League Championship Series, with the Guardians having taken down the Tigers. And like I said before, guys, perhaps the 4th time's the charm. And we will get to talking more about the Yankees and Guardians and previewing that series a bit in the social media segment, because that is, as you could probably guess, primarily what that segment is about. But first off, I just wanted to mention a couple of things in news before we get there and wrap up the show already. I know it's crazy. But alongside my opening, just talking about everything with the series and all around Major League Baseball as well, basically hammer out the recap there. And other than news, you got the social media segment and previewing what is ahead for the championship series to come. And that is primarily what the news has to do with. What we could expect with a number of things, whether it comes to the roster for the American League Championship Series, the starting rotation that the Yankees will set, who they're starting in Game 1, any other injury updates on any potential names we could expect to get back on the field for this series, who perhaps were not on the field for the Division Series. A couple of things to talk about. So why don't we start with the biggest thing that was announced earlier today, when the Yankees finally decided on a Game 1 starter and thereby a rotation for the American League Championship Series. So Garrett Cole obviously finished off the Division Series after pitching Game 4. Now, naturally, next up would be Carlos Rodon. But the Yankees had a decision to make, especially after how he looked in the American League Division Series, did Rodon. Would they rather start the series off with Clark Schmidt? He's on pretty regular rest going into tomorrow night's game, and he definitely looked better than Rodon did in his outing for the DS. So, do you choose to maybe go with him? And the Yankees did ultimately go with the decision that I expected them to go with. They chose to stay in this order, in the order that they had set after Garrett Cole was supposed to be Rodon, and that is the one they decided to start Game 1. So we will see Carlos Rodon on the mound tomorrow night, facing off against Alex Cobb, who the Yankees are very familiar with over the years, whether it comes to the Guardians or the Tampa Bay Rays back in the day. The Yankees are familiar with him. So I hope that that works to their advantage and it goes well. But you also have Carlos Rodon potentially being his emotional self and hopefully not flying off the handle like he does at times. That's what you hope for. Because Game 1 is important, in my opinion, as far as setting the tone for the series. Now, especially in a best-of-7, it's definitely not the end of the world to lose Game 1. You have plenty of other chances. You got to win 4 times. But in my opinion, it's an important way to make your stamp on the series by starting it correctly, especially if you're the home team like the Yankees are. So, because obviously the Yankees have home field advantage, of course. So, Rodon has got an important job to do tomorrow night. and I hope he bounces back from his Game 2 start. Cole was able to bounce back after his original start to start the ALDS. Will Rodon be able to do the same thing by starting the first game of the CS? I think he very well can, as long as he keeps his emotions in check and maybe does not overexert himself right away in the first couple of innings, which I appreciate the effort and really love getting fired up that way, but if it's going to cost you the way it did as soon as the fourth inning, I don't know how worth it is. I'd rather you pace it out. I personally don't think it was all to do with that because Rodon was still throwing like 99 miles an hour in that fourth inning of Game 2, so I don't think it was necessarily that all of his energy was gone or that he had expelled all of his energy or used all of his energy up. I just think he's got to pace himself a little bit better as far as his emotions. Can't let himself get so into it to the point where he gets distracted or too cocky and rides too high maybe. He's just got to try to stay grounded because his own worst enemy is himself. Much like the Yankees are at times to themselves, but Rodon is right in the center of that. He's a good example of that for the Yankees. He's got to control himself. Stay grounded. If he could give the Yankees, I would say, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 innings of one-run ball, I'd take that every time. Preferably 6 innings, but I would take 5 innings of one-run ball, especially considering the state the bullpen is in right now. My God, I would trust them. But I honestly don't think that's too tall of an ask for Rodon. We'll see if he can deliver. But they went on to announce the rest of the rotation for Games 2 and on. After Rodon, considering he'll be on regular rest anyway, so it's totally fine if you ask me, and it's good to, especially if you get off to a good start in Game 1, give yourself that much more of a chance to win both of the first 2 games. They're going to start Garrett Cole after that. And either Rodon or Cole will definitely be in good shape to start again, especially in Cole's case, towards the end of the series for sure. Because they'll have their days of rest for travel if they necessarily have to come back to Yankee Stadium ultimately for a potential Game 6 and or 7. So I think that this lines everything up okay. Following Cole for Game 3 would be Clark Schmidt, and then Luis Gil will be getting his first postseason start for Game 4. So that'll be interesting to see. Gil has had quite a bit of rest. I'm not sure how that will have affected him, whether it'll be refreshing for his arm or if it's been too long since he started and he might be all over the place. It's going to be very interesting to see how that affects him. But I'm pretty confident in Cole and Schmidt especially, but I think Rodon could very well bounce back tomorrow night. I pray he does. But Gil is definitely going to be interesting. See how he does after all the rest that he's had. He didn't pitch at all in the division series, so it'll be very interesting there. So that's the rotation announced starting tomorrow. Rodon followed by Cole, Schmidt, Gil. That's what's to look forward to ultimately with that, with the rotation. As far as the Championship Series roster is concerned, I wish I had additional information for you, especially considering we're in a news segment right now, but that actually hasn't been announced yet because the Yankees had made it clear that they were going to make this decision tomorrow on the day of Game 1. So we're not going to hear this until tomorrow, so I'll have that news for you next week if you even care to listen to that part, because by then it'll be 6 days later and the CS will be well into its games. But nonetheless, yeah, that'll be announced tomorrow, so keep your eyes out for that on your own time to see how the Yankees officially decide to go with their Championship Series roster. I do hear that the main thing they're mowing over right now is whether to go with 12 or 13 pitchers on the roster as opposed to the 11 that they went with the division series. So we'll see what ends up happening with that as far as the official roster is concerned. Look out for that tomorrow, especially if you have a Twitter account. It'll definitely be all over the place at some point tomorrow, for sure. And lastly, really for Yankees news, before moving on to the social media segment to put a bow on today's episode, we have some injuries, some injured players that were said could make an appearance for the American League Championship Series despite having not appeared in the Division Series at all. A couple of these names happen to be in the likes of Nestor Cortez and Anthony Rizzo. Obviously, Nestor at the very end of the season got that elbow flexor strain, which is not good at all. I had originally said that I highly doubt that we would see him at any point in the playoffs, regardless of how far the Yankees were to go. As of right now, it seems to still be that way. There really hasn't been too much of an update on him, but I really would continue to not expect to see Nestor Cortez for the rest of the way out. And even if he were to be there, I think you would expect him in the bullpen at the most, because they're definitely not going to throw him a lot. But I would continue to not hold my breath at all on Nestor. Really no not too much of an update on him, and I really don't think it's a good idea to bring him back even when he's got an elbow flexor strain. I don't think that'd be a good idea at all. When it comes to Anthony Rizzo, finally, there have actually been clips of him all day long on Twitter taking reps down at first base alongside John Birdie and Oswaldo Cabrera. So that's good to see, especially from a defensive standpoint. I think that's very good as far as Rizzo, but they haven't really made an official decision on him yet. They keep on saying that there's a chance that he could appear in the championship series. Again, like Nestor, although I do think there's more of a chance for Rizzo, of course. But like him, I also wouldn't totally hold my breath on this. And honestly, from an offensive standpoint, while the guy has 2 finger fractures that he sustained at the end of the season with that hit by pitch, I don't think you would be able to expect much from him offensively either, which the Yankees, they need to have some offense, especially from first base throughout the playoffs. And I think that at this point, Oswaldo and even John Birdie give a better chance for that. So I'm not saying I wouldn't want Rizzo back in there. From a defensive standpoint, I definitely would, even though, again, like I said before, Waldo and Birdie have held up very well even on that end at first base. But as far as wanting the best out there, I'm not so sure Anthony Rizzo with 2 fractured fingers is necessarily the best option right now. I'm not trying to disrespect him. I'm not trying to hurt the feelings of any diehard Anthony Rizzo fans out there. Hell, I've said I love Anthony Rizzo. I was willing to give him one more shot to see what he had down the stretch after he came off the injured list, which a lot of other people were saying the opposite of. So I like Rizzo. I don't want to insult him or the people who love him to death at all. I am one of those people and have a great respect for him. But I'm not so sure that even if he were to be back out there, that is the best choice for the Yankees at first base right now. I know some people may say that's silly because Birdie and Waldo are not primarily first basemen by trade. They are not. Rizzo is, and he has his veteran experience out there. He's the one that goes over to talk to the pitchers when they're having a tough time and really settles things down. I understand and agree with all of that worth of Rizzo. I do. But right now, with 2 fractured fingers, I just think we got to be honest here. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it. I mean, no disrespect. But I'm not sure that's the best thing for him right now, whether it comes to the team or for him himself health-wise with his fingers. And while there's a chance he could be out there, wouldn't hold my breath. And it seems like an official decision, again, is going to be made tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. The decision with that and the roster will probably come out very close to each other, if not at the same time. So just like with the news on the roster for tomorrow, same thing with Anthony Rizzo. Keep your eyes peeled for all of that news come Monday tomorrow. Now, let's wrap up the show with the social media segment, primarily centered around, of course, the American League Championship Series between the Yankees and the Guardians. Before we get to what was another open-ended question, though, probably an obvious one that you likely saw coming, but really, again, like last week, the only one that really matters. Let me just give you a preview of what's to come for the series starting tomorrow night for Game 1, just so you know what the deal is in case you don't already. But for tomorrow night, Game 1 will be at Yankee Stadium. Once again, the Yankees have home field advantage. Rodon will be on the mound for the Yankees, as I said before. Alex Cobb for the Guardians. The game is going to be at Yankee Stadium at 7:38 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. They will be playing again on Tuesday because they'll still be at Yankee Stadium, so no off day for travel or anything like that. So unlike the division series when they had that nonsensical day off between games 1 and 2, despite staying at Yankee Stadium, that will not be the case for this series. They'll be playing the immediate next day, still being at Yankee Stadium, Tuesday night, 7:38 p.m. Eastern. This game will see Garrett Cole, like I said before, taking Game 2, taking on Tanner Bibby for the Guardians. That'll be the Game 2 matchup, 7:38 p.m. Eastern at Yankee Stadium. Wednesday, they'll be off for travel, of course. Thursday, they will pick things up in Cleveland for Game 3. It'll be Clark Schmidt taking the mound for the Yankees. No official pitching matchup announced yet for the Guardians. That'll be at 5:08 Eastern, just so everybody's aware, on Thursday, the 17th. Game 4 will be on Friday, October 18th at 8:08 p.m. in Cleveland. Luis Gil will be on the mound for that one. Then Game 5, if necessary. Because if the Yankees sweep, obviously, by a miracle if they sweep, then this one will not be necessary. But if necessary, Game 5 will be Saturday the 19th at 8:08 p.m. Eastern, also in Cleveland. If the series has to go beyond Game 5, regardless, this will be the last game over there. 8:08 p.m. Eastern. No pitching matchup announced as of yet, but you assume that after Heel, it would circle back around to Carlos Rodon. Then after that game, well, they'd be off on Sunday when we yap once again, so by the time we talk, 5 games will have come and gone, again, 5th game if necessary, for the American League Championship Series. So if it's done by Game 5, then the series will be over by the time we talk again next Sunday on the 20th. If it has to keep on going, then Games 6 and 7, if necessary for both, or for either or for both, would obviously be on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Not this coming week, but next week. Monday and Tuesday back at Yankee Stadium to finish off the series. And then, depending on who moves on, that team, the winner of this series, will head on to the World Series and win the American League pennant, folks. If the Yankees are the ones to do it, obviously it would be the first pennant in 15 years since they won the World Series in 2009. They have not made it out of the American League since, as we know, and it gives me pause to think about. It really does. It's pretty amazing to think that the last time the Yankees even made it to the World Series, let alone won it, I've mentioned this before, but now that it is as close as it is, with a potential possibility of it being a reality, it's just getting more and more surreal to me, and it makes me think on this more and more. It's really crazy to think about. The last time the Yankees were even in the World Series, let alone won it, I was 12. A couple of months away from turning 13. I was in 7th grade. A couple of months into 7th grade, my first year in junior high. Pretty amazing. Now, I'm 27, a couple of months away from turning 28. So yes, I did get to see, comprehend, and enjoy one Yankees title in my time as a Yankee fan and a baseball fan in general as well, but you definitely cannot tell me that, like the generations before me, I'm a spoiled Yankee fan, because I have been pretty patient since 2009. I know some people would still break out the small violin for me because only 15 years, what they would give for that. But nonetheless, as far as how Yankees history has gone, with the frequency at which they won pennants and even World Series, you would say that I am one of the lesser spoiled generation of Yankee fans since the 1920s. I would say maybe except for the generation that was from the early 60s until the late 70s, and then the late 70s until the mid-ish 90s. Other than that, I'm right alongside them as one of the lesser spoiled groups of Yankee fans in their 100-plus year history since they went from being called the Highlanders to being called the Yankees. That's just a fact in the last 100-plus years. So, just thinking back on that, it really amazes me. The last time that they were even in a World Series, I was 12. Now I'm a couple of years away from 30. That's insane. It really is. Holy mother of pearl. It could give a man pause. But really, just, I can't believe the Yankees are this close again. And like I said before, even though you don't want to jinx anything, and, you know, every team that's here deserves to be here, and they're there for a reason. But the fact that their path has never been clearer, and the fact that it is actually a possibility now, it's actually a possibility within the next week. It's crazy to even think about. It really, really is. I will have never been prouder to be able to say that I was dead wrong on a prediction that I made before the season started. Before the season started, I had said that it was doubtful that the Yankees would even win the division. That would be really close. I mean, it was close, but I was doubtful in them even winning the division. I thought the Orioles would take much better control than they did in actuality, because obviously they were very disappointing, both ultimately and with the division race with the baseball they played for the vast majority of the second half of the season. But they still did manage to win the division. I did have the Yankees, regardless, making it back to the playoffs. I did have them forcing their way to at least the division series or possibly even the championship series, but I had them coming up short of the World Series again because I just didn't trust them, and I thought they're probably going to run into Houston again and have history just repeat itself for a 4th time, and I'd just be tempted to jump off the Throgs Neck Bridge. But that was my prediction before the season started, and I was sticking to it. So I didn't have them making the World Series before the season started, but my God, would I be happier than ever to be wrong about something. Oh, God, I hope I end up being wrong. I really do. I don't know what's going to happen on the Mets and Dodgers end. I mean, I do have my prediction with that. There are a lot of depending factors on it, but I do especially think that if Ohtani and Betts are kept quiet, the chances of the Mets making it to the World Series, which again, I can't even believe I'm saying, are very good. I believe they could even win in 6. I have the Mets winning in 6. Although I got to be honest, if I'm a Met fan, I'd be a little bit uncomfortable with them starting off with Senga in this series, but I think it'll just be for a couple innings, so we'll see how it goes. But I don't know. I don't really trust someone who's pitched as little as he has this year to start off a game well against top of a lineup like the Dodgers have. But regardless, I do have the Mets winning in 6. And if that's to happen, and the Yankees make it past the Guardians, again, like I said earlier in the show, for the first time in a quarter century, Yankees and Mets will meet again in a Subway Series World Series. It'll be Aaron Boone against the man who was his bench coach up until this year, Carlos Mendoza. Can you imagine that? How ironic that would be? My God. And I think I just have a nervous breakdown. I'll have a nervous breakdown regardless if the Yankees make it to the World Series, but jeez, so I can't even think about it. I'm getting myself too frazzled, as you could probably tell. So, yes, that's what's ahead for the Yankees, at least in the championship series. What could potentially be ahead for a possible World Series. My prediction on the Mets and Dodgers, what could very well happen with that. The game's actually starting pretty soon at the time I'm recording right now. So I'm going to try to wrap this up so I can go watch that, along with the rest of you at this very moment as I'm recording here in my room. But let's wrap up all this discussion with the social media segment and really giving what's really last on the agenda for today, my prediction and everyone else's prediction for the upcoming American League Championship Series, which is what everybody really wants to talk about, at least to round things off here. So the open-ended question for this week's social media segment is give your predictions for the American League Championship Series below. Who wins and in how many games? My prediction first off, guys, I have, believe it or not, and again, I may have originally predicted no World Series before the season started, but again, things happen as time goes along, and you pivot and you give your updated predictions as time goes along. That's what I'm doing here. I have the Yankees. Oh, thank you for that. I have the Yankees winning in 6 games and moving on to the World Series.
This is where the fun begins.
To say the least, Anakin Skywalker. The fun, the chaos, the uncontrollable psychopath behavior reappearing for the first time in a decade and a half. How about that? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this could actually be happening. And it would happen if my prediction were to come to fruition, regardless of the game count in which the Yankees win. The Yankees winning in general. Oh my Lord. That's my prediction, guys. So to answer the question in the episode title, given my prediction, I guess you could say that at least I feel that the 4th time attempting to finally make it past the American League and take the pennant and go to the World Series is the charm. I am not disrespecting the Guardians. That's not my intention. But not only have the Yankees taken care of them in every meeting they've had in the playoffs in the Judge era, those were also in best of 5s. I understand that, like I said before. But I just think the Yankees are the better team. Cleveland has got a pretty solid team. Got respectable arms out in the bullpen, especially their closer, Clase, of course. Their rotation is a bit on the weaker side. I do think the Yankees have the edge there, and I do think the Yankees have the edge on offense, especially if they keep Jose Ramirez quiet, which they really did in 2024 in their regular season meetings. They really kept him silent. I think he was like 3 for 23. So if they keep Ramirez quiet, that's really going to favor the Yankees. And I do think the Yankees are the better team already anyway, in just about every facet of the team. They do have their occasional habits and behaviors that make me not trust them sometimes, which I've definitely established pretty well, especially last week and the weeks prior, which is why I've had my doubts in them. But they also have their positives, that's for sure. And I do think the positives far outweigh the positives for the Guardians, and I do think they're going to come out on top. If the Yankees play at least decent baseball, I think they'll win. If they play putrid baseball, where the starting pitching is like it was in games 1 and 2 of the DS, if the bullpen all of a sudden falls apart and the offense goes quiet, which there's really no reason for them to do so, then things could turn out differently, and it could be one of the more tragic and inexcusable eliminations in recent history, if not the most. So because of that, and because of how they've tended to handle the Guardians in recent years past, I believe the Yankees will actually do it. And especially since Houston is not in their path this time, it is more open than it has ever been in this Judge-era postseason run in these last 7-8 years. And I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to go to the World Series, and I have it happening in 6. That is my official prediction. I have it being settled at Yankee Stadium in Game 6. I have them splitting in Yankee Stadium. That's the worst that could happen. I wouldn't even be surprised if they won both. I think they will win both as long as Game 1 goes well, because I have the Yankees winning Game 2. The only way they lose is Game 1 at Yankee Stadium, in my opinion, if Rodon just falls off the rails again. I have Cole getting the job done in Game 2, and the Yankee offense doing enough to win, so at least a split at Yankee Stadium, if not winning both. I believe they, in the event that they split at Yankee Stadium, they'll win 2 out of 3 in Cleveland, and they'll come back home and settle it in Game 6. That's what I have happening. So with that being said, let's hear some of your predictions, and there were a lot of them. There's no way I'm going to get to nearly all of them, like every week, unfortunately, but I'll try to get to as many as possible. Regardless of whether or not I get to, you know I appreciate it to the ends of the earth, you interacting at all with my show. So I appreciate it whether or not I get to. First up, we'll start with @TheHitterSports, saying, I'm concerned about literally everything, but my negativity has gotten them this far. Fair enough. Relatable, honestly. So it sounds like you have them winning the series, I guess. You didn't give a game count, but I'll take it that you think the Yankees are going to win because you're confident in your negativity carrying them even further. That's what I'll take from that. Up next, we have @EveLynn42 saying Yanks in 6. That's my prediction. I agree. @RMNY1976 says Yankees in 7. This is going to be a tough series. Cleveland always plays us tough, and they have a great pen. Jose Ramirez and Kwan are going to be a problem offensively. Yeah, Kwan is always a bit of a pest. But especially Ramirez. If they keep Jose under control, then if Kwan is the only one doing things out there, the Yankees can work with that. So Ramirez is really the key to it. If they control him like they did throughout the regular season, it'll go well, in my opinion. But yeah, they're no pushover. They're here for a reason, like I said. Although the postseason path overall this year is easier than it's been in years, I will agree with that. They're still here for a reason, and they're no slouches. So I agree. And their pen, yeah, like I said before, they got some good arms out there, especially their closer, so that is tough. But the Yankees' pen was as untouchable as any in the division series, too. So I'm okay with that. I'll call that a wash at the very least with the bullpens. So, Yankees in 7, that's fair. It could go that far. @KaluBorden12 says Yanks in 6. That's mine. @BucketHatK says, would say Yankees in 6. Rodon loses Game 1 and everyone on Twitter cries about it and panics. Yanks then win Game 2 with Cole, 3 with Schmidt, and lose 4 with Heel. Rodon redeems himself in Game 5, and we win on Boone opting for Schmidt in Game 6, where he struggles, but the pen carries us. Well, yeah, you went really into detail, even more than I did. But I actually projected something very similar with Rodon losing in Game 1, potentially. I'm not saying it will happen, but if they are to split, I think that is the game they will lose. And then Cole winning in Game 2, mostly business being taken care of in Cleveland, winning 2 out of 3, and then coming home and handling it in 6. It's very close to mine, actually, so I will subscribe to that. I will. @GregJC17 says Yanks in 6. Cole MVP, 1-0, in line for 2-0. Bullpen blows a lead. Yanks score late in Game 2. 13 2/3 innings with 3 runs. Wait, are you just talking about Cole for the rest of that tweet? You kind of went off the rails there a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little confused by that. But yeah, Yanks in 6 overall. Yep, in agreement with that. @Laura_Icemont. My buddy Laura says Yanks in 6. I agree. @Sean Shalinsky says Yanks in 7. Okay. So the general consensus, Yanks in 6 or 7. I would hope everybody's being objective like me, and if you think the Guardians are going to win, you're being honest about not just saying the Yankees because you're a Yankee fan. If the Guardians were going to win, or if you thought that they were going to, I would hope that you're honest about that like I would be. But yeah, we're getting anonymous Yankees so far. I hope that that doesn't come back to bite us with us being confident in them for once. Although I think people were mostly confident with the Yankees with the Royals as well, but you get what I mean. Life has an interesting way of coming back to bite at times. At big_Puma 1363742 says Yanks in 5. Aaron Judge will finally emerge, further getting the rest of the lineup going. Soto will hit for power. This Cleveland team has pesky hitters, but by and large, the same lineup. The Yanks have beaten them time and again. Yeah, hopefully Judge does pick up with what we saw in Game 4. That would definitely be ideal. Soto hitting for power would be great. We didn't see too much of that in this series, although he just missed a home run a couple of times in the DS. So hopefully that goes over the fence in the following series. And yeah, they're a bit pesky, but like you, I agree that they will handle them like they have in the past. At Cashman Sucks NYY says the Yankees pitching will need to hold Kwan, Lane Thomas, both Nailers, and Ramirez down. If that happens, and Judge and the offense hit with runners in scoring position, especially against the Guardians' tough bullpen, then I'm confident the Yankees win in 6. Yeah, Lane Thomas is definitely also another name. I mean, he had the huge freaking grand slam off of Scooble in Game 5, which was humongous. Thomas was a good pickup for them. Definitely was, and you're going to have to keep him down too. But again, Ramirez is at the center of it for me. So if you keep him down, I think the rest will fall into place. Thomas and Kwan are probably to follow as other hitters who are most important. The Nailers really don't intimidate me that much. I'm sorry. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. Probably will. But ultimately, they really don't intimidate me nearly as much as Ramirez, Kwan, or Thomas do. So we'll see. But you make good points, definitely. But you do subscribe to Yanks in 6 like me, ultimately, so I agree. At iGolfDoYou says Yanks in 5. All right. At Yankee Ken says Yanks in 6. At Yankee Bob P says Yanks in 6 as well. All right. Rebecca at Peace Now for Life says Cleveland scares me with Class A. But that being said, I say Yanks win in 5 games. Let's go. Bring it. Exactly. Bring it. It's truly now or never, bro. Yankees team, I believe on paper, is better than any of the Judge teams since 2017. And while Cleveland is no pushover and they are here for a reason, the path has objectively never been easier in all that time. It's now or never, truly. Do it now. Especially with Soto guaranteed here for now. Right now, bro. It's got to be now. Bring it. Win in 5. That would be fantastic. Although I see it in 6. We'll see. My good buddy Spencer at Musician DMD. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Spencer says, Judge will come alive. Stanton will continue his greatness. Cole will rock and roll. Love that rhyme right there. What do you say we give Spencer a good old sound effect for that rhyme? There you go. Good old for you, Spencer. Hope you like that one. Anyway, the Yankees are well balanced and fueled by their shortcomings of the past. They are truly on a mission. This is the Yankees' year. After 5 games, the Yankees will be capital uppercase AL champs. So Spencer has them in 5. All right. I do agree with a lot of the sentiment in your reply as well, good sir. Up next, we have at Yanks Bar says Yanks in 5. Getting a lot more Yanks in 5 here. At Beth_Mushin says, I'm pessimistic. The Yankees have killed me so many times the last few years. It's hard for me to get my hopes up. I was pessimistic about the division series, and they ended up proving me wrong, so I'm going to hope that they continue to prove me wrong in the championship series. Listen, Beth, I totally understand that, and that's completely fair, you feeling that way, because I feel similarly, and that's why I had a lot of the predictions I did leading right up to the playoffs. So, honestly, it's tough to blame you for feeling that way, but I do believe that we have seen our first prediction of the Guardians winning. Didn't get a game count, but it sounds like we have our first Guardians victory prediction here. I, like you, hope you are wrong, Beth. At Egan Spangler 777 says, Yankees in 6. I agree. At Noluck 11 says, Yankees in 6, but I'm hoping 5. Yeah, that would be quite nice. Wrapping it all up nicely in Cleveland. At Patty O_Bronx says, Yankees in 6. All right. At Snarky Nice Guy says, Yanks in 6. At NYY in Golf says Yankees in 6. Okay, lots of Yankees in 6. A lot of people agreeing with me. I think we get the idea. Let's do the usual final 2 as always. First up being my girlfriend Vic Salimo, of course, at Vic Salimo. And she says, I think it'll be a good fight back and forth and keep us at the edge of our seats. But ultimately, I think the Yanks will take it in 6. All right, great minds think alike, my love. Glad to see you agree with that. Last but certainly not least is my mom at Julia Gina Scudero. And my mom says, I'm starting to believe that we could see a Subway Series if our Yankees get as charged to win during the actual game like the Mets do. So I know that even though I'll be 10 years older from worry watching this next round along with the rest of us, I believe we will win in 7. God help us all. Amen to that, Mom. Oh my gosh. Amen to that. Game 7 will definitely have us all at the edge of our seats. So I hope it doesn't go that far. I hope it is as soon as some people are hoping in 5, or even my prediction in 6. That would be fine. But 7, that might be a little bit too much for our nerves. Mine in particular. But yeah, you talk about what the Mets have had going on. Yeah, the magic we spoke about against the Braves, against the Brewers, that continued against the Phillies, man. I mean, the comeback in Game 1 that we spoke about, and then... yeah, the Game 2 was unbelievable. They ended up losing that one like we spoke about last week too. But, I mean, the spirit that they continued to show in 3 and 4 at Citi Field. I mean, Game 3 was just really in their control. But Game 4, they were down, getting a little bit towards the later part of the game again, albeit only 1-0. But huge grand slam by Lindor, who has gotten that huge hit for them anytime they needed it for the most part in 2024, particularly in the second half. And like I said last week, they got some dark magic being conjured up here that I believe only the man upstairs himself has enough power to whip up. So, definitely interesting to see what the Mets do against the Dodgers. I have my prediction there. I do think their dark magic will continue. Could very well be wrong, because despite the fact that the Dodgers are a bit short on starting pitching, well, they still have some solid arms out there in their bullpen, and their lineup becomes a bit less threatening, to say the least, if you keep Ohtani and or Betts quiet. I don't want to say that they're bad by any means, because they are certainly not, and they could definitely end up winning this series. I wouldn't be too surprised, but I do think it's very possible that the Mets end up beating them. The game is just getting underway as I'm talking right now, so we'll see how this series starts off on this very night for Game 1 over there on the National League side of things, but it's very possible, guys. Yankees-Mets Subway Series World Series could happen, and by the time we talk next week, we could know the ultimate answer as to whether or not that really is a reality. And in saying that is surreal. I am much more nervous about that than some Yankee fans might be willing to admit otherwise if the Yankees were to face the Mets, because like I said, with the spirit and the dark magic they got going right now, that would definitely be making me feel a little bit uneasy for sure. I'd be a little bit less confident than I would have if I were old enough to understand 2000 with the way the Yankees were then. I would have been a lot more secure with that team. But nonetheless, it'll be interesting either way, whether the Yankees face the Mets or the Dodgers. I know that Major League Baseball's ultimate fantasy for years on end now is the Yankees and the Dodgers, so I'm sure they would love that. Although, subjectively as a Yankee fan, I'd probably be tempted to stick a pin in my eyeball with all the Ohtani glazing I'd have to listen to in that series. And if the Dodgers were to win, then I have to hear about how, Ohtani is more of a winner than Judge when it matters. Oh my God, I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I just don't. So, listen, either way, regardless of the Yankees' next opponent, it should be interesting. But in order for that to even happen, they got to beat the opponent right in front of them, the Cleveland Guardians. And again, I think that they're going to do it in 6. Let's hope and pray that that ends up being a reality. If it isn't 6, then by the next time we talk, we'll be preparing for Game 6 the very next day, next Monday, in speaking on Sunday. We'll be getting ready for Game 6 and having collective heart attacks as we anticipate the very end of the championship series before the World Series. But if they get it done in 5, then we'll already be celebrating the first Yankee pennant in 15 years by the time we talk again next Sunday. So anything is possible, guys, and could very well make next Sunday's episode a very interesting one. And I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait to see what this week has in store. I can't even wait to see what tonight's Mets-Dodgers game has in store, let alone the Yankees and Guardians starting tomorrow. I'm, like a lot of people said, at the edge of their seat. Doesn't even begin to describe what I'm feeling. I don't even know what to say, honestly. I don't. We didn't get to experience this feeling again last year, but the feeling has returned now, and with the path seeming more realistic than it ever has in the Judge era, it's that much more nerve-wracking and exhilarating, honestly, and I don't even know how to handle it. I really don't. So I'll handle it for now by ending the show. How about that? So that is all for episode 239 of Yapping Yankees today, my friends. Please remember, if you have not already, to follow me on all social medias. My Facebook fan page is Mike Scudero NY. My Twitter or X is at Mike Scudero. My Instagram is Mike Scuds97. Subscribe to Yapping Yankees on all 4 of the platforms it is available on if you have not already. That is YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Like, subscribe, comment, and show your love across all 4 of the platforms like you always do such a great job at doing, my friends, along with interacting with the social media segment like you do today and every single other week, which, again, I could not possibly be more thankful for than I already am. If you have the time and you have missed any of the past Yapping Yankees episodes, then please do be sure to go back and listen to those. Every episode of Yapping Yankees that ever was for the last 5.5 years, give or take, going all the way back to episode 1, all the way up to today, episode 239. Those are all available on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you're more of a YouTube listener, episodes 34 up to episode 239 today are available on there as well. But once again, I thank you 3,000 for listening to me yap today, my good friends. As always, I have been your host, Mike Scudero, and we shall yap again next Sunday, October 20th, when I come at you with episode 240 of Yapping Yankees. And who knows what it will contain based off what happens this next week. But until then, guys, hang in there, be patient, please stay safe, look out for your loved ones, do not have a heart attack over Yankees baseball like I probably will. Go ahead and kick life's ass this week, as always, like I always tell you to do. And Yankees, all I can ask is, Rodon, please be more consistent and steady tomorrow, unlike the way you were in Game 2 of the DS, when you started off looking better than ever, which is always great, but then just imploded, ultimately, like you've had the habit of doing many a time, especially in your time here in a Yankee uniform. Just go out there, be consistent, be grounded, give a good start. Yankee offense, do a good enough job to get this series started off on the right foot. Go from there, and with as little stress as possible, which I know you're not going to listen to that part because you love to torment all of us in the Yankee community. I'm speaking directly to the team right now. Give us our first pennant in 15 years. Like I said before, there has been no better time than now, especially in the guaranteed year of Juan Soto. Get it done now. Beat the Guardians. Take care of them as you have so well in recent years in the playoffs, whether it be in a best of 5 or 7. It's been best of 5 in recent years, but still, take care of them. Give us the first pennant since 2009, and up and away we go from there to hopefully number 28, which is all of a sudden starting to look more realistic than it has been at any point in the Judge era. But first, you have the Guardians in front of you. Get it done. Get it done. Until next Sunday, my friends, take care, Godspeed, and let's go Yanks!